Good morning, Noel. Thanks so much for taking some time out to get involved in Business Owner Spotlight this week. Would you like to introduce yourself and tell everybody a little bit about what you do?
Yes, Scott, thanks very much, and thanks for having me on. My name's Noel Brady. I have my own company called Consult Nb1. I probably do two main things. One is market entry into the Northern Ireland market, and very specifically the Northern Ireland market. I don't pretend I have contacts in other markets, but Northern Ireland's my market has been for about 45 years. So that's both the public sector and private sector. So that's anybody who wants to do business development engagement or market entry engagement to meet the right people in order to get established, or if they're here already and they want to grow their business, then they would hire me to get them into the right places, both in the public sector and the private sector. The other half of my company, and if I'm a specialist in anything, it would be in public sector tendering. So I write tenders for a living. I've always done that. I've always been involved in tenders. Both I worked in the public sector for 16 years and in the private sector for the remaining, God knows how many years it is now, 30 probably. Always involved in public sector tenders, both sides of the table. And I understand that process and the systems and the organizations that are involved in them. So I help people from the very smallest companies who are going for a very small tender to large companies who are going for, I'm working on a tender at the minute for it's 485 million. And they're all mostly in Northern Ireland, but some people hire me to do tenders in the UK and Wales, Scotland, etc., because tender writing is very similar across the piece. So that's the two main things I do: business development, business entry, or tender writing, or help build a tender team, or help build a better way of doing your tenders, or simply writing the whole tender. Some people hire me to write the whole tender because they don't have anybody to do it.
Yeah, so that's really interesting that you're quite clear. It's just the Northern Ireland market really that you focused on. Do you think that served you well, just to really focus on that?
It has, Scott, because I mean, don't get me wrong, I have because of work with international companies who are coming into Northern Ireland, and because of work on big projects, and because of work, bringing companies who are big in Southern Ireland or big in France or big in the UK into Northern Ireland, then I get to know all their senior people, because it's generally the senior people you're working with. So I have a great network of people outside Northern Ireland in the other markets. But if somebody said to me, Noel, I want to meet all the public sector people in London, I could introduce them to a few, but that wouldn't work. If someone says I want to meet the right people in the public sector in Northern Ireland, it doesn't matter where they are. It might be the First Minister down to the guy who looks after the car park in Rose Park House. I'll get to them because I know everybody in the public sector here. So I don't have any problem getting to anybody here in the public sector. So I feel much more relaxed when people say, right, Noel, we're concentrating on the Northern Ireland market for a change. Now, as I said there, it can be people who are already here who are just trading in Northern Ireland, but they maybe they've hit maybe a ceiling where they can't grow. Yeah. And they're trying to say, how do we get more business? How do we make this company bigger? And I'm taking them into more people in the public sector, more people in the private sector, maybe potential people who they could work with in partnership, move things up a gear. But a lot of them are companies who are from Southern Ireland or England or France or whatever, who have done well where they are, but they don't really have done anything in Northern Ireland, but they see Northern Ireland as a key market. And since Brexit, that's actually it's interesting, that's one of the byproducts of Brexit, and it's one of the good byproducts of Brexit, is that a lot of companies are seeing Northern Ireland as a key place to be in terms of the future, because they can trade into the UK, into Southern Ireland, and into Europe, all from the one place. So it's interesting. And I know protocol, I'm not going to get into the protocol argument, but it's actually, that's the positive thing about Brexit, is that we're the only part of the UK who can trade in all of the different regions. And, you think of an international company, if they're thinking of setting up in the UK, they think twice now and think, actually, if we were in Northern Ireland, we could have a doorway to Europe, doorway to Southern Ireland, doorway into the UK. And that's a very positive thing for them.
Yeah, no, totally agree. It makes sense. I'm just getting a sense, though, a big part of the solution or service you provide obviously is your experience, but what you're describing there as well is your connections, and you're so much more effective in the local market because your connection is so stronger.
I suppose, well, you know this yourself, Scott, you're in the same business in terms of building. I mean, when we talked earlier, you talked about building your network or building your reach and the team that you use for different things. I mean, if you imagine, I've been working in Northern Ireland since 1975. I worked in the public sector for 16 years, and then I've worked in large companies for, maybe about 14 years. And then I started my own business. Throughout all that time, I just have created a huge network, and it's all in Northern Ireland, So if you imagine, I'll try and give you an example. My phone, I probably have 14,000 phone numbers in Northern Ireland. They're all people in business, so that's not a bad place to start. If somebody says to you, Noel, I'm trying to get to meet, 10 out of the top 100 companies in Northern Ireland, would you help me? Well, of course I'll help them. And it's not that hard for me to do, because I've built up those connections over the years, and it creates I always call it like a spider's web across Northern Ireland. That's the way I look at it, that you go to one wee part of the web where, somebody says, right, do you know anybody who has anything to do with doing business in Derry? And, I'll go to my database and I'll look for people that I know in Derry, and then I'll start mapping a wee connection program to say, right, we'll go and see those people. They'll introduce to some other people, and we'll start finding out more and more about the area that you want to know about. And that could be, renewable energy, waste, IT. It doesn't really matter. It's the people are involved, and some people are involved in more business than one, and the same way it works in the public sector. If you know what department to contact and you've got a few contacts in there, then you go to somebody, and you ask them, listen, who in your department deals with XYZ? And they say, yep, this guy here, they'll introduce you to him. And you just continually use that network to spin your clients into the right people. And you know yourself, the key to business for me, well, maybe you go back to the original question. For me, networking is number one. Big time. There's nothing else for me except networking. I'm a serial networker.
Yeah, no, and it's something. It's a strategy on its own. I mean, you have to be good at it, and it's if you can use it, it's very, very powerful. You mentioned there though that you you worked for public sector and then went into bigger companies and then started your own business. So I'm keen to understand what would you say has been your biggest learning since you've been in business for yourself?
Since I've been in business for myself, probably biggest learning at the start was don't give away things free. That was a big learning curve for me, because, and I think it is for a lot of people who start their business, and they think at the start, right, if somebody asks me to do this, I'll go and do it, and then I'll talk to them and I'll see if I can get some business. And I find myself as a consultant, maybe doing workshops and maybe going to meetings with boards and sitting for 2 or 3 hours, telling them all the stuff I could do and talking about their market, and then not getting hired. And then thinking afterwards, wonder why I didn't get hired. And then finding out that they had actually used some of the information I gave them to go and do stuff, which I really should have held on to. I shouldn't have given that away free, because that was my IPR. So I think one of the key things I learned was never close the door on a business development opportunity. That's the first thing. But keep that business development opportunity as a business development opportunity. It's not the actual service that you're providing. So you go and you have a coffee with people, or you have lunch, or you network with them, and you explain what you can do and you understand what they want. But don't step over that line and start providing services before you've actually got a commercial agreement with somebody. And I learned that. Probably it took me about 3 or 6 months to learn that. But, it was looking back and going, look at the many days I've spent doing things for people and they didn't pay me, and that sort of suddenly registered with me and said, look, you're actually giving away services free here without even, having any understanding of whether these people are going to do business with you. And that's, it's that old thing of knowing when to close and when not to close. But in this case, make sure you close before you start giving away the state secrets. It'd be like, if you were selling the product, it'd be like saying, we'll have one free before we even have a conversation. And that's just madness, because you'd end up giving 100 machines away free. And then how many are you going to sell after that?
It sounds like even to learn that within the first 3-6 months, you learned it quicker than others, maybe.
Well, I think you look back on the time you spent, and you said, now my business went well from the start, but whenever I look and analysed the first 3 months how I spent my time, it became blatantly obvious to me there's 6 or 7 days that you've spent with people, giving them loads of information, and they never actually contracted with you. You didn't get any business out of it. Now, if you'd done a half day with somebody and then you ended up getting a contract for 10 or 15 days consultancy, that was worth doing, but it's only making the decision and knowing when this is a serious engagement. Yes. So it's qualification. It's probably, that's the word for it. It's making sure when you start your own business that if you're talking to people, qualify the opportunity, because there is only you. Your time's valuable, because if you're out doing stuff and you're not being paid, it's taking away time where you could be getting paid. So you've got to use that time well and really heavily qualify the opportunities to know when some people are just time wasters. They're only looking for information. They're never going to hire you.
Yeah.
And some people can't make up their mind, but it's up to you to persuade them.
Yeah.
But I find after doing it now, I am probably doing this nearly 20 years. In fact, next year's my 20th year working on my own. I find that after a while now, you get quite cute at deciding who's going to do business and who's not going to do business. So, a coffee can be a very quick coffee, or it can be a coffee and a chat and a scone, because it's going somewhere. Whereas I can quite quickly now find out that, well, this person really wanted to meet me because they wanted to find out some of the contacts that I have and get to them, and then that's not a good way to do business.
Yeah, so that's a sixth sense you nearly just need to learn and develop yourself over time. And you said there, obviously, 20 years in business on your own, so it is only you essentially. What's been the biggest hurdle you had to overcome? And I'm thinking along the lines of, you mentioned about your time, how you apportion it. Was there something else that you realized, like this, I have to get a system in place for this, or anything like that?
Yeah, I'm very process driven, Scott. Maybe that's the ex-civil servant in me, but I am very process driven. I even drive myself mad because I'm so process driven. I make myself fill in forms and open files and stuff like that. So I'm very process driven in that sense. I suppose the two things, I think if you're in business on your own, or even a small business, cash flow is a very important thing.
Yeah.
Because you're in my case, my cash flow feeds my lifestyle. And
sure.
I'm married and mortgage like everybody else, and my grandchildren, etc., etc. And it's not so bad that I'm older in life, but the thing is, in terms of your running the business, cash flow is exceptionally important. And I suppose one of the lessons I learned was, don't let debts build up with people, due to, I get on great with those people. They're very friendly. Oh, sure, they'll be all right. They'll pay me eventually. Don't worry about it. And, you end up, 2-3 months behind in invoices. And that's all very well until something bad goes wrong, because if something bad goes wrong, you as a lonely one-man band or small SME gets hammered. It's the big guys that get paid. The small guys don't get paid. So if something goes seriously wrong in a business, you're bottom of the queue. So one of the things I'm very strict about is cash payments, making sure your invoices get paid in time, and, adopting a tough line if, people start to not do what they should. In my world, if you agree with somebody, you provide the services and you give them an invoice, and if they pay you in 30 days, well, 30 days is enough time for anybody to pay an invoice. If it goes beyond the 30 days, you might let it go for a wee while and you make a call and say, listen, would you clear that invoice? And they clear it, then fine.
Yeah.
But if by the time your next invoice is out, you've still got another invoice outstanding, I just think you've got to take action at that point. You've got to be strict and say, listen, guys, I can't carry on doing this on a monthly basis, that I just keep providing services to you and you don't pay me.
Yeah.
So have we got a problem here, or is it something that you do with everybody? Because I'm an SME, I don't work like that. So let's man up and get this thing sorted. And if not, maybe it's not the way we should be working together. So cash flow, important, very important.
Yeah.
Which I just introduce processes to say, right, I'm not going to tolerate people not paying their invoices. We need to knock that on the head quite quickly. And if it turns out to be an issue because people just don't like paying people, or they haven't got the money to afford it, then you just stop providing the service. You just have to, because there's no point in running up debts. It just no point in it. I suppose that's one thing. The other thing probably was time management. You know, is making sure you leave enough time to have a life. You know what I mean? And when you first start your business, you go mad. You know, you're doing everything you want. You're doing everything you can. You know, because you want the business to be a success. It probably took me a year or two to then realize, oh my God, I'm just maxed out here. I can't. I'm not turning anything down. I'm just going with everything. No matter what anybody asks, I'm going with it.
Yeah.
And it took me a while to get to a point where you say, you actually have to sometimes you have to turn down business, or you have to push it into the future and say, listen, I'd love to do that, but I can't do it within the next 2 months, but I could do it the 2 months after that.
Yeah.
And I suppose the other thing for all businesses, which I think is key, but I'm a business development consultant, so it'd be stupid if I didn't think this, but always work on your pipeline. You know, so I always have fitted into every week a 1 or 2 or 3 new business development type meetings. I would regard this as one. Scott, you and me together, there's always potential we can do business together in some way. So I regard this isn't a waste of my time. This isn't a waste of your time. We're telling each other what we do, and then there might be an opportunity in the future where we work together, and that's good. So I try and do maybe 3 or 4 of these types of things. It may not be like online like this. It could be just meeting somebody for coffee, or meeting a new company that's coming into Belfast, and really just telling them what I do, and maybe even doing a wee seminar where you've got a bunch of people and you tell them about how you do to help people with tenders. 3 or 4 activities like that, because you've always got to think about, you might be busy at the moment, but it doesn't take long for 2 or 3 customers to drop off because you've finished doing what you're doing with them. And then all of a sudden you look around and you think, hold on a minute, I've only got half of the days booked next month than I had last month. How did that happen? So it's keeping that business development circle spinning around all the time in the background, where you're bringing new clients on, but also you're building that pool of, I would get people sometimes who, they might ring me and say, remember 10 years ago in the Hilton Hotel, you did a seminar on public sector tendering? And I said, yeah. And they say, well, I was at that. Do you still write tenders? And I said, yep. And then they say, well, would you come out and see us? Because we've got this tender and we don't know what to do with it. Yeah. So that's a bit of business. I would have forgot about those people altogether.
Sure.
But because they've put it into their wee database, and that's back to the networking thing and back to the business development piece. You've got to keep on doing that with as many people as you can, because time and time again, it works for you, because somebody remembers, I've got the card, I've got that guy's card, I was at that seminar, I've got his email, I'll give him a shout. He might be able to help us. And I get an awful lot of business that way, of people haven't spoken to for years, or word of mouth. Somebody else says, I met a guy who does tenders, you should ring him. You'll get him on LinkedIn, his name's Noel Brady, and then you get this strange call from somebody saying, you haven't met me, but one of my friends told me to ring you, and that's it.
So there's 3 massive things there. So cash flow, because you only get to run out of cash once. Always be working on your pipeline, and don't kid yourself with your time. Don't be saying yes to everything. Like if everybody just took those on board at the start, they would have.
You know yourself. You can look at your time. Now in recent years, the last 2 or 3 years, because I'm getting a bit older now, I've tried to reduce my time to spend more time with the family and my grandchildren. So I've managed to get myself to a 4-day week. That takes quite a bit of work.
Yeah,
because there's certain things that I do, like sitting on boards and churn organizations, where they're fixed things that you have to have in your diary. Like the monthly board meeting's always in the diary every month. So you have to work around all those things. But what I did, one of the things that in order to get me to the 4-day week, was to get very strict about going to things which aren't revenue earning or not business development orientated. You know, so if somebody goes, no, we're opening a new office. You wouldn't mind? Would you like to come down and have a cup of coffee and see the new office? And you'd go, yeah, of course, you put it in your diary, you know. And that's maybe 2 hours, 2.5 hours of your time.
Yeah.
And you say, well, what's actually going to happen when I go there? You're going to go there, and it's not really a networking thing because somebody's going to say a wee speech and everyone's going to get a cup of coffee. You might get networking with a couple of people, but that's going to be it.
Yeah.
So you're going to the trouble of getting in the car, going, trying to park a space, maybe at the event for an hour, doing the same, then going somewhere else. You're 2.5 hours of time. What have you actually achieved? So I started to very critically look at what am I actually putting into my diary, and which of those things are revenue earning and which are business development potential to them, and try and restrict all of that. And it's amazing the amount of things you can't find. You know, you can find things that you've done before last year, and you say, well, I don't really need to do it again because I've already done once.
Yeah.
Things like that. And you can take
it's starting to value your time, really, isn't it?
It's putting a value to your time, and that it's either revenue earning or it's business development orientated. So therefore it has a purpose. And other than, you know, of course you don't put everything out. I mean, your friend says, you know, come on in, we'll have a bit of lunch in Belfast, we'll get a couple of pints. You know, well, I'm not going to turn that down. So, you know, but that's probably part of my one day off. You know, I maybe say, right, well, that's leisure time. So I'm booking that in as leisure time. What I've found is that the 4 days that I'm actually working and dedicating to the company are now more productive than the 5 days used to be, which was quite surprising. I expected a big drop in my revenue because it was taking 1/5 of my resource out. If you imagine, you know, a consultant, how many days do you have in a year? 200, maybe 220. So if you're saying I'm going to a 4-day week, you're dropping 40 days out, which you can't use. So of course you're going to have a drop in revenue. And I did, but it wasn't the drop that I expected because I was using the 40 other days better.
Yeah. No, that's such an interesting point, that, isn't it?
It is.
Listen, so much good advice in there. No, I really appreciate it. Just to finish up, then, what's the future look like for you and your business, and what do you see as the big challenges moving forward at the minute?
Right. I think one of the challenges is really getting our head around the outcome of COVID. It really has changed the way people do business. Some people, I think, will never be back in the office. So it's that balance of, like, I mean, if I think pre-COVID, I would never, you know, I would very rarely have done a Teams call or a Zooms call. I mean, virtually never, because it was all face-to-face, me out seeing people, working in workshops, etc. Now then COVID came and we did everything online, and then COVID's now starting to go and we're going back, trying to get back to normal, but I don't think we'll ever get back there. I mean, I still have lots of people who say, yep, I'd love to do that meeting. What time can we do a Teams call? There's no question of it going to be face-to-face. So we've got to adjust. That's one thing, you know, just adjusting to the ways of work now have changed. We can't expect that, you know, we're going to go into Belfast, spend the day going around to different offices to see people, because a lot of people have just given up their offices. They don't have offices anymore. Everybody works from home. So it's a different way. It's a different model. I think we're actually, you know, it is at times of scarceness and you know, money pressures and all that. But I you know, coming out of COVID, I see lots of people are just working very hard to grow their business, and you know, and looking for opportunities. And you know, in my space, that's a good thing, because that's what I'm there to do, is to help them. Yeah. So I see it as it's a positive market against a negative background, if you know what I mean. I know exactly. Times of adversity make people think different and make people want to think outside the box. And people who have maybe never used a consultant before are maybe sitting going, hold on a minute, we got to do something different here. Why don't we get somebody in, give us some fresh ideas? Even if he only comes up with two ideas, that'll do. You know, got to do something. Yeah. And I find that's the truth of it, in that lots of companies now are really thinking, got to be different, got to do things differently. Let's get some help. Let's do some training. Let's do some PR. Let's do some different things. Let's use social media better. And that's a great place for people like ourselves, like you, me, and other guys and girls who are in that space where we're providing services that help people grow their businesses, because that's what they're wanting to do. So I see it as a positive market at the moment.
Positive market against the negative backdrop. I haven't heard it put as well as that. I think that's really something.
Well, it's the first thing people say. If you say to people, well, what do you think? What do you think about? They say, oh, geez, interest rates and mortgages, and then you say, yeah, okay, but we're not here to talk about that. What about your business? And they go, well, look, we're looking for we want to recruit some people. We're trying to break into new markets. And you're saying, well, that's a positive way to think. Trying to think about the negative things, because they're there anyway. They'll either change or get better or get worse over time, because they're macro global things. The things you can do things about are the things that are in front of you in your business. And therefore, let's concentrate on that. Put the other stuff at the back of your mind. Get on with it. And let's see if we can think of a few new things to do, a few new doors to open, a few new partnerships to work, and make some money. Let's make some money while in the background the Chancellor's taking more money off us. So what? The more we make, he can take a share of it. He's going to take a share of it anyway. So let's get on with it. No,
it makes a lot of sense to me. Again, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing some of your wisdom you've built up over the years. And again, I just know so many people are going to get so much value from it. So thanks again.
No problem at all, Scott.